And again, I'm just like, my eyes are rolling because that's so Wall Street. Like, I've been on trading floors where fire alarms are going off and they're telling us to leave the building, and we won't leave. We're like, no, we're not leaving. I'm trading. I'm trading. You have to. No, you don't. Well, what are you going to do? Because I'm not leaving my position, and I'm going to keep trading. I was here in. I was in Manhattan for the 9/11, but I wasn't trading at the time. I was doing a tech startup, but I was here in London for the '07 bombings, and we kept going. We kept trading and broking all throughout. You're hearing there's a bomb here, the bus got blown up, and things were all over the place. We kept going for 5 hours till they had to literally like bring security and drag us out of the building. And again, that's just the mentality of Wall Street, which probably is a great glimpse into what the mentality of it is, which is it's all about the bucks, and it's all about how we can make more, and not much else matters. And so yeah, I understand why you left. I mean, I left too, and it's interesting because I say this in my TED Talk from like 2014. I'm like, most of my colleagues in banking thought I was crazy. Some of them still think I'm crazy, and some of them are right, is what I used to say in my talk. But I don't know of another person that's walked away from that industry because the golden handcuffs are so strong. There's so much money that it's very hard for people to walk away, and they just can't do it. They can't do it, and so they stay, and then they just go along. And then again, if you're being compensated that way, sometimes even your brain gets co-opted that I'm just doing the right thing, and it just keeps going. And so this is part of that distortion that you're talking about. And in the book, which is incredible, and everyone needs to grab it, you kind of break down these sections. You kind of talk about chaos, which is these events that we see happen, and then you see this kind of addiction that happens where I think you're talking more about how we kind of get used to what happens, and then you talk about overdrive and then metamorphosis, which goes into kind of crypto wars and the distortion. But when you talk about those three pieces, it's a very interesting arc that you show there. Is this like a cycle that can continue, or is this kind of just shows this kind of problem, reaction, solution that is played out to the benefit of these financial institutions and not necessarily to the real person?
Well, that's exactly right. And in the book, I specifically cover that period from the financial crisis, which was chaotic, right? And we're basically
never let a good crisis go to waste.
Never let it go. And we're
and that's what you're talking about, right? People are taking a crisis and saying, we're going to fix it. And guess what? We're going to, as you say in the book, double dip. We're going to go ahead and do everything that's in our interests.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they sell it to the public, and
they say it's for your own good. So the Fed goes into like this massive overdrive. Rates get cut to zero. This gets repeated. Central banks around the world. Wall Street banks did great out of that. They paid some fines for, some shady subprime deals and things that they did. But at the end of the day, they did really, really well. From a bonus perspective, from a stock price perspective, from a just sheer, we've got this, like we're okay now perspective. And a couple firms went under. Two of the firms I worked for, Lehman Brothers, which is coming on to its anniversary in September of when it went bust, and Bear Stearns, which went bust in the March prior to that, which I had also worked at. So if you're counting, that's 2 out of 2 institutions I worked with did go bust. Not when I was there, but the point being that the survival of the fittest in the industry. The ones that were closest to the governments, the ones that were closest, because they even had revolving doors back and forth between the different Feds. So it was the New York Fed, the main Fed, et cetera, were the ones that were ultimate survivors, either by basically their competitors going bankrupt, or them just simply buying their competitors, or some combination. And that's what wound up happening. So it was this sort of survival of the fittest, but it wasn't because they were better. It's not because they stepped away from the crisis. They created that financial crisis, but some of them got more money than others, and more benefits than others from the government and central banks. And so that's kind of that idea that, okay, there's a crisis, we're going to fix the economy that has been disrupted by the financial crisis that has been caused by the financial institutions by giving them money. I was like, okay, and that's basically what happened around the world. I mean, I talk about the U.S., I talk about other countries in the world, and that was also that period of chaos. And then you get to a period of addiction. Okay, the markets can't exist, which we're seeing right now because they're all getting very volatile because rates are going up a little bit, right? At the time, what was basically built into the system after the Fed went to zero, after all these trillions of dollars were created out of nowhere to help the markets and the banks and the financial system, they couldn't live without it. So anytime the Fed was like, we're going to raise rates a little bit, we're going to let some of the assets that we bought with this fabricated money, the debt that's on our books, sort of roll off. We're not going to sell, we're just going to let it roll off, which is what's happening now. The markets would just freak out. When the Fed raised rates by just 25 basis points in December 2015, January 2016 was an abysmal time for global markets. Markets were like, no, don't take our money away, don't take our drug away. And that lasted basically until all central banks went back to easing money again in the middle of 2019 because Wall Street was running into more problems. And then, of course, we had a pandemic where they went into what I call overdrive in the book, which is one of the next sections, where they're just like, we're just going to because that worked out so well, we're just going to sort of deluge all of the systems with all of this extra money with no exit plan or anything else. And we're just going to, and there's going to be no impact from that, which of course there was, because now what we're seeing is that even a little bit of a shift back to tightening the cost of money, making it a little bit more expensive for the major players and individuals in these markets, is causing a lot of negativity and volatility and uncertainty in the markets. It's being blamed on inflation. The Fed's fighting it, the Fed's not fighting it, it's real, it's not real, but the reality is the markets want cheap money. It goes back to that addiction.
Right.
And we're not going to be okay until that addiction is satisfied, which is, I believe, ultimately the cycle. We talk these things as a cycle, that ultimately the central banks will come to a point, to a reasoning, to a moment where they're going to do it again. It just doesn't make logical sense that it was done twice and it was done, because the financial crisis did not go on from 2008 until 2020. Like stuff changed in that period, and yet the general position of central banks was pretty much the same throughout that period. So it's not like it's going to necessarily not come back.
Right.
Now, the metamorphosis I talk about in the book is something else. The metamorphosis is basically, okay, well, what comes out of that? How can we see all of that, all this recent period of history and all of its impacts on us from a real economic standpoint, and how it manifests on Wall Street and stock markets and everything else? What changes? What happens next? And what can we see from this cycle of experience, of chaos, of addiction, of overdrive, that actually metamorphoses, actually changes? And it's kind of my favorite section of the book, because I think it's hopeful.
Right. It's kind of fun.
And it's fun, and it was fun to write. And honestly, my publisher, we can go into this in more detail, but for example, my crypto chapter, my retail renegade sort of stories in there, my publisher was very much wary about putting those chapters in the book. And I was like, but these things are happening, and they're a direct result of all this other stuff that happened. So I can't not put it in the book.
I'm looking for partners, collaborators, colleagues who want to join forces with me around the globe and create real value, generational wealth, and financial freedom for everyone else around the world. Get involved in the cryptocurrency markets, get involved in the NFT markets. This is your moment. Life all comes down to a few moments. Don't let this pass. Now it's not too late. Next year's going to be too late. Ultimately, this is about freedom. That's the way I see it. This is about giving power back to the people and enabling billions of people worldwide to use the financial markets to improve their lives and those of their friends and their families and their communities. Honestly, I think it's a violation of human rights not to allow people basic access to financial services. Because right now people are being kept in the dark, they're being robbed of education, and it's a travesty. And so I'm looking for people that want to join me and be a part of this solution. And that all happens inside the DeFi Academy. The gains my students are making are absolutely amazing. Double, triple-digit gains in the first month alone. That's amazing. This will change your life. Now is the time to get involved. I'm going to tell you exactly how my students in my academy made money in the last 30 days. I'm talking about real trading results. And let me just whet your appetite a little bit. Let me hit you with some numbers. I'm talking Brendan from New Zealand is up 68.77% on the month. Steve from Europe up 83%. Albert in Singapore up 169.9% on one single trade. I got Susan up 153% on her call options alone, also rocking 139% returns and 442% returns as well on individual trades. These are people that are changing their financial future in the last 30 days, but it's based on trading discipline.
I've graduated over 500 students from inside my academy from over 54 countries around the world. It's amazing. When it comes to crypto, DeFi, and blockchain, we love this space. We truly believe it's the future. This is down to our core. It's authentic to what we're doing, and everybody can tell through the camera because you can't make this stuff up.
If you're watching me now, wherever you are, I implore you, take 60 seconds right now and join my academy. Apply today. Now you've got a chance. Life all comes down to a few moments. What are you going to do? What's the choice that you're going to make?